to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, I'm Mara Childs.
And I'm Madaleine Osmun.
We're from the State Board of Education, and this is Inside Schools, where we give you the inside look about the high school and beyond plan. So on Martin Luther King Day, both Madaleine and I had the opportunity to give testimony on House Bills 1031 and 1081.
Mara, I'm sorry, let me take a bit. That presentation is in your packet too?
Yeah, on the right side.
Yeah.
Just in the
thank
front.
you. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Thank you. A little closer.
Yeah.
Is this better? Both 1031 and 1081 expanded college and the high school access to sophomores, which means that you could get college credit when taking the class as a sophomore rather than as it currently stands, which says that you have to be a junior. And of course, this also meant that parents and families were informed of this opportunity as early as freshman year.
All right, so my student update begins with sports. Track began on Monday, March 2nd, and I always love track because it's a place where not only me, but all my teammates learn valuable skills like teamwork, sportsmanship, and just being an honorable person in general. And a couple weeks ago, a good friend of mine and I competed in a regional National History Day competition. And what we did was we took a topic and we made a documentary on it, a 10-minute documentary. It was quite a bit of work, and we took second place. So we're moving on to state, and we're going to see how we do there. So that's at the beginning of May. And this was a really cool opportunity to have a project-based learning experience. And then perhaps the most exciting update for me is that Mount Spokane High School will now have a financial literacy course for their seniors. And it's an elective. I will be taking that class, and I'm excited to report back on how it is. But in talking to my counselor and my principal, we decided that it would be a good idea to provide seniors with the opportunity to learn about financial literacy.
In a very similar fashion, water polo for me began last Monday, and I'm sad to be playing my last high school season of sports. It's spring, but I'm excited to be captain for my team this year from Shorecrest because the two high schools in our district form a club team to have enough players. And at my high school, last Friday we had our second annual anti-bullying assembly. We brought in a speaker who told us a very alternative sort of story about a program on Animal Planet where younger elephants were transported away from any sort of older elephants because they wanted to preserve them, and the younger elephants turned into, he described them as punks. So we were all reminded to act as the big elephants, because once they brought in the big elephants were standing in the way of them and taught them how to behave. So our students had a lot of positive feedback about that, and it's part of our creating a culture at school. And I also am still serving as a liaison between my school and our Shoreline School District Board, and I expressed an urgency in changing the bell schedule because we have a new aligned schedule between both high schools that students were very unhappy with. So based on feedback from a comprehensive district-wide survey, we're still working on changing that. We're being flexible, and this is all to accommodate 1080 hours.
So on to the purpose of our presentation. Our purpose is to inform the board about student opinions. We really wanted to delve deeper into our local schools and kind of see what their opinions and ideas about the high school and beyond plan, graduation requirements, and post-high school readiness would be, instead of just Mara's ideas and my ideas put together. So this gives us a chance to share anecdotal evidence from these schools and be able to show you what other kids think and what other teachers think.
Yeah, something that we'd like to highlight is the introduction of teacher input about the high school and beyond plan. Both Madaleine and I felt that we could talk to students all day, but we definitely need to include teachers in this conversation. And again, this is part of just continuing an active dialogue between everybody that is involved in the educational system because it's important to be inclusive.
So in order to get some of this feedback, Mara and I both created focus groups in each of our two schools. And at my school, I took elite crew class, which had mixed grade levels, everywhere from 9th to 12th, and then a very broad range of ethnicities, and just, it was a very diverse selection of students.
At my school, I used the senior civics class, which is a required course for the class of 2015. So this was not what you might consider, you know, a group of kids that are on the AP track. This is something that is required. So it was a wide variety, some people that I've never been in class before with. So that was really cool.
So there were 5 specific questions asked of each group.
And we got particularly insightful comments just because it was amazing to hear how much students really had to say about what they wanted to be able to get from their education. And we learned that they know what they need to be ready after high school, and they know what they're not getting. So to have that articulated in a focus group type of setting was really unique and interesting.
So for our first question, we asked what the schools had done to prepare the students for life after high school. We wanted to know what the schools were doing well and also what they weren't doing well, but we started off with the positives. And so students from Mount Spokane said that marketing classes had taught them a lot about job experience and how to write a resume, practice some interviews, write emails and professional letters. And then also the English classes all worked with college entrance or essays, not exams, and taught students how to be effective in their essays. They also learned cooking and how to live independently in a class called Independent Living. And also in that same class, they learned about personal finance. One thing about these classes, the only one that is universal for every 12th grade student, 12th grade student, is the English class. The marketing classes are electives, independent living is an elective, any other classes were electives. So those are not given out and available to everyone.
So at Shortcrest, or in our district, we have the Career Center, which is headed by, at our school, it's Miss Monson. And through both high schools, we have the opportunity to look at job opportunities, community service opportunities, and get help for anything that we're doing after high school. They help with setting up gap years, and it's really just one person that we're just so lucky to have help every single one of our seniors go through their last year of high school and figure out what their plan is. At Shortcrest, we also, kids voiced that they like having cooking classes. We have a culinary arts program that is very extensive. We actually, they have the opportunity to run a catering company, which is Shortcrest Catering, so they get job experience there too. Kids in AVID specifically said that they like to be able to go to field trips to local colleges. So that was just the AVID group. And we are offered personal finance classes through senior economics and senior civics, which are required for the class of 2015. And again, as most high schools offer, we have college-focused support. And specifically at our school, we focus on involving parents. So they have meetings for doing things like FAFSA, so the kids don't have to do it by themselves.
All right, so the second question was, what grade did students first hear about the high school and beyond plan? We wanted to know when this idea of a future beyond high school was first put into the kids' mind. So I was really kind of shocked at this. There were very diverse findings from this class. One kid said that he learned about the fact that he needed to prepare for his life after high school junior year. And someone else said 7th grade. Someone else said elementary school. And then I asked what they thought about that and what time they thought they should really they should be exposed to the high school and beyond plan. And a lot of them said that 7th grade or middle school was too early, and if they felt like they were being badgered to grow up quickly. Kids want to be kids. They aren't allowed to be kids for very long. And they said that it was too much pressure and that it stressed people out, and that quote at the bottom, all of that pressure to decide so early makes students detest education you should want to learn. But other kids said that they were perfectly ready. to learn about it early, and that they thought it was a good idea to start thinking about it, not to lay down a concrete foundation for what their future was going to be, but to start talking about it and having a conversation about it. So sometimes I wonder if kids know what they want or what they need. But I guess the general consensus was the right time would be to start the conversation at the beginning of high school.
So again, there were sort of mixed results in when kids felt ready to be talking about their post-high school plans. Chronologically, I have elementary school, people brought up they were introduced in 7th grade, middle school, and then as late as freshman year. And of course, at every level of introduction, it looks a little bit different because the kids are of a different age and they're doing different things. So in elementary school, a lot of kids in my class had siblings that were going through the high school process. So someone said that watching their sister do their senior project was her first kind of glimpse into that post-high school, getting ready to be in the real world. 7th grade were teachers of language and math, mainly language because it's in 7th grade when you can start retaining that language credit for high school. And so obviously you're going to open a conversation about high school credit. And same thing for math is you can get credit in middle school that will carry to high school. And that was done by counselors. So that, of course, takes a very strong counseling support in any school. And then in middle school, it also looked like pamphlets about going to college. So they didn't actually receive pamphlets about post-high school options. They received, they call it the college book because it means that all of a sudden you're in 7th grade and you're going to college. And then some people were as late as freshman year, and this was through English classes where we have done personality and skills inventory tests. I don't know the name of the program that we use, but it's like we use a cluster finder essentially. And this was actually discouraging to some people because I think, like I've mentioned in the past, there was one of my friends who, after taking that, their #1 career choice was a bookbinder. And that seems, silly.
So thirdly, we asked them what options were shown to be possibilities for after high school. And I thought this one quote was very, very powerful. So I'm just going to read it to you. I worked up at Mount Spokane Ski and Snowboard Park, and I was in the food area, and I flipped patties, and I realized that I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. So I'm going to be an electrician. And I thought that was really cool because we always hear actions speak louder than words. Well, in education, experience speaks louder than lectures. So his experience going to work and doing something that he didn't enjoy motivated him to be empowered to work for his education and to work to do something more. This particular student told me that he slacked off a lot of his freshman, sophomore years, but as he had this job experience, he really turned everything around, and he wanted to make sure that he had open doors for him.
So at Shorecrest, what I had people do is we made a list of all the things that they had been exposed to, and then we sort of talked about each one, and I pulled kind of a quote that sort of summarized what people thought about each one. So for college was by far, obviously, the #1 possibility for after high school. And one person said specifically adults push too hard towards college, and I think that it kind of goes back to what Madaleine has said before, is when you see our educators and the adults that we're exposed to in school, I mean, most of them did go high school right to college, so for them, that's just normal. But kids feel like they're pushed too hard towards that, and that sort of loses their interest. And then second to that is community college, and Shorecrest has a really strong relationship with SCC, which is Shoreline Community College, and someone said it's like college if you're not as good, and to me, I thought that was like, that's something that, I mean, no one had the courage to actually come out and say that, because like no one talks about it, but it's so true in schools where people, when you hear someone's going to community college, I guess people just kind of look down on people that choose to go to community college over like a four-year university, and that's really discouraging to people that maybe want to go to community college, but then find themselves like pushing towards a four-year university just because they don't feel like they have that option without facing stigma. Another option is a gap year. Some people, and then here it says sometimes people say you're lazy because if you're not going to school for the next year, like it doesn't seem like you have any direction with your life, whereas in reality, gap years can be very focused and actually allow you to enter college a much more mature person, and that can be very helpful. Entry-level jobs, teachers have joked about working at McDonald's because that's what people think that entry-level jobs look like, but kind of partnering with the internships is they really, like, we don't even know what jobs are open to us. And then, again, going back up would be military. Kids are told that you can obviously go into the military and then go to school later, but very few kids select that option because it's not college and it's not seen as something that's valued in society.
So we asked what skills students believed were very important for having when graduating high school. And by far, the biggest thing that they said was social skills. Recognizing social cues, being able to be kind to people, being able to communicate your thoughts and ideas clearly so that others can understand, and then being able to understand the thoughts that are communicated to you. And that was very important to all the kids that I interviewed. They also said that it was important to be responsible with your money, but they said, how can I be responsible with my money if I don't know how to take care of it? So we need to teach them how to take care of their money and then other things to be responsible with in general. Finance skills, realizing that everyone's human and that people make mistakes and that it's okay to be kind. I think a lot of times the school system seems dehumanizing. And we're just kind of fed information as students a lot of times. There are classes definitely where that is not the case, and there's a lot of interaction, and it's a great learning experience. However, there are some classes where we're just trying to be a machine that can spit out all the right answers. Embracing differences and realizing that people aren't the same, obviously. And then they wanted to learn how to be independent and have good study skills for college and making sure that they can succeed in their classes that they're paying so much for in college. And then they wanted to make sure that they knew how to be mature. And lastly, just kind of threw it up there, how to vote. We don't know where to go. I personally don't know where to go to vote. I don't know how to be educated about the people who are running. I don't know where to find that information. That would be nice to know so that I can, and we as the rising generation can give back to our community and we can be an active participant in our government.
I think this list is very similar to things expressed by Madaleine, so I won't take the time to read it, but if you want to look it over. When I see this list, I see a regular adult human. And if you think about what you do in an average week as someone living by themselves, at least a couple years into a job, this kind of sums up like what you kind of need to know how to do in order to be successful. And when I think about the number of these skills that I come out of after high school knowing, I think that I have a lot to learn before I can fully live on myself. I'm very grateful for the fact that my mom has really taught me a lot of things, and I've asked to learn a lot of things at school, and part of that is having that requirement of senior economics and senior civics, and not everyone has that opportunity. And I think what it's important to realize now is that adults, the adult generation, like mostly your generation, I think definitely had a stronger connection with their parents in terms of what life skills they were learning, because there wasn't such a focus on getting really high grades to go to college. So now parents are way more hands-on in academics, but they're way more hands-off with things that we need to know that you would expect parents to be teaching. So, for example, parents are helping with homework a lot more and trying to be involved in their students' academic choices, but they sort of neglect the fact that this is also a young child is trying to live independently. And that's not necessarily a fault of the system. I just think that the education system should be able to adapt and fill in the gaps of knowledge for all students.
All right, so for our last question, we asked what schools could do better. And essentially, the resounding response was just teach life skills. Teach the skills that we're missing out on. An interesting experience that was related to me, this girl was asked by her mother to go and do the laundry, and she replied, "I don't know how, you never taught me." And the mother responded by saying, "What? I never taught you?" Sometimes I think adults don't realize that we don't know things. And sometimes I think adults don't realize that we do know things. So figuring out that balance, that everything is not just education and academic based, everything, there's a much broader spectrum and a lot of other things that are more important.
So these are a list of sort of specific things that schools can offer to help kids, but I think this last point here, life skills beyond book smarts, is again one of the most important things that we can do for our citizens, because students that are coming out of high school are the new generation. They are the new adults of the world, and we need to have adults that are competent in all aspects of life. We don't want robots that can go to a job and perform a task and then come home and don't know how to do their own laundry.
I think over the years we've done a good job with being intentional about having a plan for students, encouraging students to be intentional about that. It's changed over the last 10 years. We used to have a more formal kind of homeroom and advisory program, which I really liked. It was a way to get to know students without the sort of burden of grading them. You're going to leave this place, and what are you going to do? They need to be able to think through the steps of any plan, of the military, of a 4-year college, of a 2-year college. And I think they also need some awareness of finances, and that's something I would love to see more of. Financial literacy, financial planning, financial understanding, because so often that doesn't come from families. Well, students need to have some sense that it matters for them. They need to have bought in that there will be a life for them after high school, and hopefully they found something they're passionate about, something they love, something that's really interesting to them. Sometimes I think we try to kind of make programs and fit kids into these programs, and really I think maybe it's just that school's another place with adults who know some stuff, who can guide a young person. Less regimented, I think, and more, hey, have you thought about, or hey, you told me you want to go to community college. Let's pull up the application. I think it works well for a majority of students. I think there will always be students who kind of fall to the edges of any system we try to put into place. Magic wand that would just prepare everyone and make them competent adults. But again, that idea and sort of that belief that we want school to be a place where you can explore, and a place where there are adults who care about you and know about you and want you. And sometimes that does mean extra funding. Sometimes it does mean, paying a group of people to come and sponsor a financial aid night. The other part of it is that belief that schools are full of really good people who care about kids. Because no one would do this job for very long if they didn't care about kids.
I like the community service piece of it. Research shows that students that are involved in the world beyond their world develop greater skills, greater empathy. They're less likely to dwell on their own issues. So I like the community service part, getting involved, and sometimes even finding other activities. It's a great way to explore career interests and things like that a little bit. I miss the project part of it, and I think the project part has a lot of value because there's so much project planning in all aspects of life, whether you're a parent, a community member, volunteering in the workplace. And I don't think there's as many opportunities for a larger scale project like that in the classroom. I think students need to be well-rounded and really strong English skills. Being able to prepare food, looking at your health well-being, looking at being able to take care of yourself financially, and being able to have really strong communication, interpersonal relationship skills. So if you're not able to communicate effectively, or your relationships at home are struggling, then you oftentimes bring that to work. And those are just basic skills that serve you so well in every aspect of life. I think that teachers and admin should be more facilitators and provide opportunities, but the students need to invest in themselves. As administrators and teachers, we provide opportunities, we facilitate, we encourage when somebody's struggling. We hopefully help them to see the relevance in what they're doing. And sometimes there's a gap in that, in students understanding the relevance. So we're all in it together. And everyone has a role, and everyone should be held accountable. Teachers have an opportunity to be good role models, and I think that's important. But I think we need to be very careful in imparting our own morals, and we need to present things and let students come to their own decision. And that's where the facilitation comes in, is we provide opportunities for them to explore what is important to them, not tell them what we think should be important to them. I think we strive to be inclusive, but tracking occurs, and I think that's something that we've been talking a little bit about in quiet circles in teaching, that a lot of students are encouraged to take AP classes that are college bound, and then your regular generic classes or not your regular classes, but what used to be, basic US history. Maybe a student doesn't want to take AP US history, but they steer away from regular US history because they feel like it's a lower level class. Our world is changing so much that flexibility and adaptability is huge. But then it's your one shot. You see a little bit more consistency. Yeah. Okay. Unfunded staff support or financial support to really carry it out.
Okay, so this big picture was summing up, thank you so much, Cindy, our other slides, and we've already reiterated that. And so teachers, we say teachers are not preachers, but they are role models. And so the reason why we got teacher input is because they interact with students every day, and they are very influential in many students' lives. A lot of kids, you can ask them, who was your favorite teacher? And it's not just because, sometimes it's because teachers let you leave class 5 minutes early, but for the most part, kids know good teachers because it's the teachers that care about the kids. And after high school, we want to be well-rounded, and if you think about it, nothing excites most of us more than the prospect of living on our own. And we get to stop living with our parents, but as soon as graduation comes and we get prepared to move out and we go to college, that first night in the dorm room, a lot of my friends said, I didn't know what to do. Even if it's not in that first night of college, it's when you live on your own and you realize how much the last 13 years in school has given you in terms of being able to understand the world. And you see bumper stickers that say, if you can read, thank a teacher. And that's so true, and I think that it's really important to remember that teachers are there to help kids find their talents and develop them and be passionate people.
During high school, kids generally do want to be prepared to take on challenges, and like college or a job, but they don't want concrete ideas and concrete paths that they have to follow. They just want to be guided. based on their interests, based on their skills. And then things like community service or job experience or any sort of experience really work to teach important lessons. They teach us how to interact with other people, and that being kind and being a good citizen, being a good human being in general is important, and it makes you feel good and it makes you happy. And then something like a senior project really should be more than just a checklist. A little check, put a check mark in the box. It shouldn't just be that we're applying to college. It needs to be more meaningful so that we, as students, get more out of it.
So to expand a little bit on what the second teacher, Miss Cobb, kind of mentioned is we'd like to say please be careful of borrowed time, because we fully understand that putting systems in place that are effective take a lot of time and effort from everyone, and we really appreciate the flexibility, but it's hard when you put a lot into a certain thing because it's going to be good for the kids of tomorrow, right? There are still kids today that we aren't necessarily being as helpful towards. So when we do put plans in place, it's important that we give something to every piece of this system that we're doing, because it's true, if you feel like you're kind of the class, like when we say for the class of 2019, here I am in 2015 saying, well, what are they going to have that I don't have? So that's just something that's important to remember.
So the best thing the state board can do is to support teachers while they support the kids. And you can trust the teachers and give them time to give the kids the tools that they need to succeed. Because the most powerful thing that someone can do is give someone the tools that they need to succeed.
So this is not, you're going to have to look at the screen for this one. I don't think it's in your additional materials packet. But this is an added slide that Madaleine and I wrote yesterday, because well-rounded options for well-rounded students and citizens should be of the utmost importance. Yesterday, we heard about failing the mainstream process and falling into alternatives just to let you graduate. We see that failing in, I say mainstream, quote-unquote mainstream process, isn't just a student's failure. It's never just about the kids. And it's clear that there are skills that everybody needs, so it's not just a kid's fault for not having those skills. And we say accountability at different points puts less pressure on high school and beyond, and emphasizes becoming a lifelong learner, because when you get to high school and all of a sudden you're expected to know all of these things because you need to live on your own, it just has a sense that maybe you've just run a marathon, but you've failed. And we think that it's more important to integrate this belief in essential knowledge that you should have, which is, the high school diploma. That's what that represents, but it can come in so many different forms. And we have a sort of diagram here. So the top is a very rudimentary explanation of the current system, which says that there's this one box that's of your graduation requirements, and those are your essentials. And if you pass that, no matter how you pass that, you're fine. But if you fail that, you fall to these alternatives because you failed this first time. Teachers and all adults always tell us that it's okay to be different. It's great to be unique until you have to graduate high school, because when you graduate high school, everyone is expected to do the same thing. So at the bottom, we believe that the high school and beyond plan should propel students towards finding something that works for them. I know that I went to an alternative middle school, and for our final projects, we would always have 3 options, a writing option, a hands-on option, and we can create something for ourselves. So what we've demonstrated with these 5 shapes are the essentials, and the integration of essential knowledge into graduation that looks totally different. And so it's not because you failed this, you go here. It's because you're good at this, you go here. So we want to put focus on what kids are good at rather than what we think that they should be good at and we're saying that they're bad at, because it's just very discouraging to try to pass something else when you know that you're passing it because you failed the first thing. We think that it should be more like a menu.
Thank you for listening, and we'll take any questions at this time.
Thank you so much. You two did a wonderful job and always very prophetic. Are there questions from the member or comments from the members of the board? Connie?
One of our high schools in my home district had a life skills class, which the kids uniformly thought was a joke and was ultimately dropped. So what's the best way of learning those life skills? Should it be something that, it struck me that maybe we should be sending home this list or a tutorial for parents. You need to be making sure your kids are equipped to do these things, including laundry and sewing on buttons and all those kinds of things, to prepare them, because why are we doing that stuff in school? Or is it something that we really have to provide in school because there's no chance of it getting done at home?
I think it definitely needs to be a balance of both, because schools don't necessarily need to teach kids how to do laundry. That's definitely, but we need to be making sure that they know how to do those kind of things. So I think a class isn't a bad idea, but I think what is most difficult is when a class for something like those hands-on skills for life is run like a math class. So everything has a point value, and you think that you have like a chapter 1 and then you have a final. If your final was to boil an egg, kids would not take that seriously, obviously. If you know that you're getting 10 points for boiling an egg in class, that's just silly. So I think that it goes a little bit beyond that, and you kind of have to, it's not even adjusting a curriculum, because I don't know if there's anything existing, but I think it's like a final project needs to not look like a standard final. Maybe it's you run through the motions of 5 different activities that you'd have to do in a week, and it's not just this is worth this many points, because that's great for a math class, but it doesn't work when you're doing real life skills.
I would say that a life skills class is a good opportunity for students to have, and that our focus is definitely on education and on academics and on homework, and the most time I spend on anything is on homework and school and the academic side of school. So if teachers, or if the curriculum, or I don't know exactly how this would be implemented, but if the focus was more geared towards a general, well-rounded person who knew life skills, basic life skills, and teachers maybe brought that up in different areas of school where it fit in, or said, hey, the letter home sounds actually like a smart idea. So that parents also realize, hey, my child should probably learn this to be able to be successful. So, I think it's a great idea as a class. For those students who don't need it as a class, then it's good to just remember that there's more to life than academics.
One other comment on that is, if you think about the options that we have with technology, classes could look completely different. Rather than having to do in-class finals and written everything, almost every kid has a phone that's capable of taking a video, so maybe you just take a video of yourself doing laundry. That's you can't fake that. You can't fake a parent's signature for that, but it's really easy that you just have your mom walk you through, film you doing your laundry or something. And I just think that it's time to explore all the new options that we have available and try to use them in new and creative ways.
Deborah, and then Randy.
So I want to commend you for your presentation and all the thought and all the work that went into it. I guess I want to follow up on Connie's question, because we asked a lot of schools, and this board does, OSPI does, our legislature does. All of the points are really important, but how can we build a stronger partnership between schools and parents? Because to a large extent, the life skills and helping students to develop life skills, that is a responsibility that parents should be taking on. So one of the things that occurred to me, and I just want to hear your thinking, having life skills or strong social skills, could that be something that we add to the high school and beyond plan, but the expectation would be that would be more of something to help parents and students and their children talk about, well, am I proficient in this? So that it wouldn't just be focused on what happens inside the school, but it also could be broader. But I'm just So what's your thinking around that? We started talking about the high school and beyond plan, so is there a way to integrate that into that?
I think that the most important part there is that the communication between the parents and the schools need to be stronger.
Right.
And
I agree.
I mean, I'm blessed with a great family who has taught me a lot of these life skills, but not all kids are blessed with that.
Right.
And I guess you can't really solve every problem, but I think it would be helpful if maybe somehow some grading system, looking at proficiency in those areas, if that were to be included into the high school and beyond plan, would be helpful. I know that we have student-led conferences,
Yeah,
but
that's what I was thinking.
I don't get a grade for that or anything. I receive nothing showing me how well I did, and so it's not very helpful because I don't get a score back. I don't have anything to improve upon. I don't have anything to look at to say, oh, I'm at this level, I want to be at a higher level, and how am I going to get there? So I just say, as long as it's tied into things, as long as we're able to establish a better communication with the school and the parents, then that would be helpful.
I think something about the high school and beyond plan is it definitely puts a lot of focus on high school and beyond, and I think what people forget is to get to high school, you went through 9 other years of school. And I think that what I see a need for is a comprehensive but also cooperative system between all entities and participants. So, I mean, we've got the state board, and there are a lot of other organizations that sometimes we have disagreements with, but if everybody sort of sat down and it's almost as if they made an itemized list for every single grade and the number of things or like things that you should know coming out of that grade. If you start earlier with some of these life skills, like social skills, like if you say, for example, 3rd grade, you should be able to identify bullying. That means that maybe in middle school, we don't have to have the "Don't Tell Jessica" come and perform every single year to us, because that doesn't do anything for the kids if they don't even have like that background knowledge to bring into it. So I think that in a cooperative system, ideally parents would be involved just as much as teachers, because it doesn't necessarily take a literal Hamlet, but it absolutely takes a village to raise a well-rounded individual that can go on and be a world citizen, just based on viewpoints, and everyone has a different experience to offer to someone, and that's when hearing all of you talk about your life experiences has given me so much when I look at new situations and look for opportunities, and just being on the board, I've been so much more I feel very lucky to have this experience, because I've been so much more open to how much teachers are working with everyone. And I think that it's that cooperation piece between everyone and show kids that we're a unified front that are there for their education is important.
Randy?
So I appreciate your thought that you put into it, and I want you to know that since 1993, the 4 goals of the state, only 2 things have been changed. 7 years ago, they added financial literacy and technology literacy. But what's interesting is the state didn't, everything else is a subject that we have to have a check mark, and you gotta check the kids that they met the standard and have a little test at the end. But in those 2 areas, they just said, try to integrate it. They didn't make it a class. So I get that both of you said you had a little bit of financial literacy basically in your senior year. How about the actual computer literacy? Where was that taught? If you couldn't take a career and tech ed class that actually teaches it, that's where we mostly teach it. Where did you get your technology literacy in your school system?
My freshman year, I took integrated communications, and that's a required class at our school, and that's where they taught us how to use the computer if we didn't know how to use like word processing, Excel spreadsheets and things like that, and how to build our website and those sorts of things. I also think that because we've grown up with technology, that's where I've learned it, is more in my life, more than schools. Because really the only time where I was taught anything was in that class.
Yeah, I think technological literacy is kind of an ill-fitting term, mainly because most of my peers, at least, most of our generation comes in with a basic knowledge of how to use computers. It's less a focus of how to actually use a computer, like open a web browser, but more how we can use resources from computers, like different programs, or be more innovative. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody needs to know how to code, but there was that campaign this year, the Hour of Code, because it seems that in all directions, like in all sectors are moving towards, technology is sort of taking over, but I think that a basic understanding of how these things are functioning is important, because kids may have ideas that they don't even know they have the power to implement if they don't have any basic idea of how a computer works. But other than that, I think we have 2-year-olds that know how to use an iPad better than I do. So I think that learning how to use the things aren't necessarily the problem anymore. It's how we can use them to advance ourselves and do better things
So my
for us.
follow-up to that would be, we don't ask high schools. We ask them for a check mark for art and music and math and English. But we don't ask for a check mark on financial literacy and for computer literacy. We don't ask them just a simple question. Just ensure us that your students are competent in those 2 areas. We don't ask that question. We don't have a check mark. Yet both of you say those are 2 extremely important issues that you should have leaving high school in your Beyond plan. So without making a requirement, without making a big deal about it and making an assessment about it, the question to schools will probably going to be, if I was to follow your lead, is just ask the schools, could you tell us how you know your kids have these skills? Because they seem to be important skills. That would be somewhat difficult. The other thing that you mentioned is basically the ability to get along and work with people and things of that nature. That was discussed in the early 90s, but it wasn't ever, that was kind of woo-woo stuff. Now we call it social and emotional education. And people are more accepting to the idea that getting along with people, being kind, having integrity, being honest. Some people used to call it kind of values clarification and character education. And we kind of stayed away from that because that wasn't the school's role. Okay, the school's role was to educate subject matter, but yet I think we've done a disservice to kids that I really believe that education is part of that. Whether you're a bus driver and teaching kids to get along with other people and keep your hands to yourself and things of that nature, being kind and being helpful, and I'm starting to see it in people's teaching now of how you're not the lecturer, but you're the coach, and other kids are working with other kids. But do you see that a change of how your education, that's coming into play in your classrooms, or just sort of in a couple of people, teachers?
Madaleine, Mara, if you could keep your comments short, we're starting
Okay.
to run out of
Yep.
time, but go ahead, please answer.
I know in 6th grade I took the second step curriculum, and I think that's the only time that we've ever actually focused on kind of emotional health. And I think that when I look at the adults that I know that are older, I see a sort of a sense of self-discipline that I don't get from anyone in my generation. And I don't think that that's anyone's fault. I just think it's the way that we interact with each other has changed. A lot of it is online, and I think that the most important thing is should be able to have healthy and effective relationships with people. I mean, I was telling Madaleine I can talk to Siri all night, but that's not going to help me get a job. So, if you stripped humans of everything, like all of our computers, we have each other, and you would have a large generation of people that don't even know how to go up to each other and introduce themselves.
I'll keep this pretty short. last year in my English class, there was a cheating problem, and it was very awkward to talk about the fact that kids weren't being honest. But it seemed like my teacher also felt uncomfortable saying that it was unacceptable to be dishonest because that was a moral value and that could be stepping on people's toes. That is the problem I see with the education system without because moral compasses aren't addressed a lot of times, and it's uncomfortable and it's like taboo. You touch it, you talk about it, you say it, and people freak out. So I think that's a big issue.
Thank you. So I have both Judy, Kevin, and then Janice. So again, if you could keep your questions and comments short, thanks.
Just let me say, yay, Madaleine. Thank you both for your presentation. It was outstanding. One of the things you mentioned that I thought you haven't maybe addressed yet, a comment that you made was investing in yourself. I mean, there's teachers investing in you, there's people like us investing in students and so forth. How do you see that being something, what would you do to help kids be more aware of how important it is to invest in themselves, or any thoughts? Because you two obviously are investing in yourselves, in your future.
Placing the responsibility on the kids. A lot of times in this generation, we like to blame other people for our problems. And placing the responsibility on themselves and teaching them that that's important would help that. And then giving them a goal that they have set up for themselves, or helping them find a goal to set, would help motivate. Because when I know that I want to get something done for me because I decided that I want to do that, I'm more motivated to work for it instead of being handed an assignment that says do this and do that and do X, Y, and Z, and then you'll get 100%.
Okay, thank you.
Something that I think is so interesting that I've heard my mom talk about and I've sort of seen myself is if a student does poorly on a test and they speak to their parents about it, the parents used to maybe go to the kid and say, well, how can you study harder? Like, what are you doing wrong? Whereas nowadays, they march in and talk to the teacher, like, what are you doing wrong? Like, why did my kid fail this? And I think it's so important to bring parents back into the equation because they're the ones that are going to help show kids that it's something they can do, is their responsibility, and the parents are caring for them and believe that, like, they should be able to do it, and not the teacher should be able to pass them through this class. It's they can pass this class.
Good, thank you.
Kevin?
Just very briefly, if I could take you back to yesteryear when you were in the 8th grade. Do you think that for you or for other students in your school, more importantly, going to college for a day, that exposure factor would be useful? I have seen that done by some schools at the middle school level. Maybe it's happening for you. How do you think that might have put other lights on for, not just for you, but for other kids?
I definitely would have enjoyed that opportunity. One thing about college visits is that I've done a couple, and I never got to be in the classroom with the students actually learning, and I never got to see what was being taught and how kind of college looked. I just saw a bunch of students on their laptops doing homework feverishly in the library and things like that. So I think that if we were exposed to that, it would definitely help me to be more motivated to see what my future is going to look like and where I want to go and whether or not I want to do college or a four-year university or a community college.
I think that's very important because I think something that is maybe not as valued as highly as it could be is the influence that students have on each other. So the exposure as an 8th grader, I mean, I think that personally, if I went to a college campus, everyone in my class, you'd see them walk a little taller, stand a little straighter, and keep their mouth closed a little bit more. Because I think that, like, quite frankly, when you're exposed to people that are maybe just a few years older than you, but act more maturely, and it's not necessarily an idolization, but I definitely think that if they were able to go into classrooms and see that you don't have to behave like an 8th grader, when they see that, then that gives them the idea that they can be like that. I just think, like, when you're in 8th grade, you're the oldest in the school. You don't, I mean, unless you go to a K-12, you don't have anyone except for teachers. And if you don't see something reachable, because obviously 8th graders, I don't think want to be adults tomorrow. If they don't see something within reach, then they give up. And when they have 6th graders around them, anything they do seems older than a 6th grader. So it's okay to act like a 12-year-old when you're 14 because you're surrounded by 12-year-olds.
Thank you.
Janice?
Thank you. Again, wonderful, thoughtful presentation. It seemed like most of what you identified that other students valued were not the academics that are the big emphasis and focus today. What do you think could be done in academic education that would bring it into a more of a value proposition for students?
One comment in my focus group was, I said, is there anything that you think is really not worth your while in school? And they said, immediately, well, one kid said, trigonometry. And I said, oh, really? Tell me more. And he said, if we had 4 years of applied math, of how to manage our finances and somehow integrate real-world applications into our math classes, we could still learn math, but also learn life skills. And so I think basic education and the basic subjects are very important, but if we could integrate that more into basic life skills and life practices, I guess. Also in English classes, I really enjoy when we will read a book and we'll sit down and we'll have a discussion and we'll talk about real world problems and current events and things. And did this person make the right choice? And we kind of looked at moral compasses that way. And I think that if we just had the two subject areas cooperate together and mesh together, then that would be kind of the ideal way.
I think something that doesn't get focused on enough is the undeniable connection between all basic education subjects. And so when you have very compartmentalized subjects such as math, English, history, if you're not interested in one, you can check out for that entire class. There's 2 hours of your day that you're not paying attention. And so I think that once you integrate all of those and because it forces students to pay attention if you're learning about something that you like. And well, it's like when you disguise vegetables as something else. It's like, well, there's some math in your English class. Like, whoops, didn't mean to do that. But then I think that giving that opportunity then to use the bridges of knowledge that you've just gained to actually use them and create new things. I think students definitely we don't have enough opportunities to create new things and be innovative. I think that a lot of kids have a lot of great ideas, but they don't necessarily see the connection to make them how to work, or they don't see a connection for how they could work together because subjects have always been so boxed up. You go from one to the next. And I think that that's where you lose kids the most.
Well, again, thank you so much for the work you did on this presentation. It was worth that extra time. I know that we'll probably have some follow-up questions for you later. So thank you. Thanks.